Thanks for joining our 9.0 product launch webinar. Let me share my slide and 1 second. All right. Hey, Juliana, do you see my slides?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yep.
So, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Abhishek. I am the VP of Product and Engineering. I also have with me Julio and Anna. Julio, why don't you introduce yourself? Anna?
Yes, I'm
Thank
Anna
you.
Lee. Oh, sorry.
Go
And
on.
I am the UX designer for JasperReports Server.
And I'm Julio Toffoli. I'm project leader for Jaspersoft Studio and now JasperReports Web Studio.
All right. Thank you. So now going forward, standard disclaimer that we'll mostly be spending time on talking about what's in 9.0, but we'll also spend a few minutes on something forward-looking. So the standard disclaimer that as much as we adhere to timelines, plan to adhere to timelines and features, things might change. All right, the agenda. We'll talk about what's new in 9.0, and we'll also talk about JasperReports IO, what's there in it, and also Studio and Web Studio. That will be followed by product demos. Anna will cover data alerting and drill down capabilities. And Julia will go through Web Studio 3.0, some more changes in Studio, like HTML component, and also white labeling. We'll also talk about a new project that we, from engineering perspective, where we are looking for people to collaborate with us. We'll spend a minute or two on some of the future topics that we are working on. And in the end, we'll take some time for Q&A, and we'll make sure that we go through all the questions that are posted on the chat, and we'll answer them. All right, let's get started. What's new? So 9.0 is our second long-term stable release. Our first one was 8.0. What I've always told enterprise customers that do not want to upgrade very soon, stick to the long-term stable release, right? And let's talk about what's new in 9.0. Okay, so first we'll cover the JasperReports Server, what's there in JasperReports 9.0. The first part is around distribution. So what we have done continuously from 8.0 onwards, then 8.1 and 8.2, we have worked on a lot in distribution. So we have added things like report bursting. We have added things like report splitting in 8.1 and 8.2. In 9.0, what we are adding is data alerts. As the name says, that you can create data alerts by going to report viewer and saying, like, for example, my sales, if it is less than 500, give me an alert. Anna will be giving a demo on that very soon. We also have, as we have done with multiple past releases, every release we focus on improving the UI UX, which talks about the look and feel, the workflow, and the features. In version 9.0, we have introduced drill down. We have also introduced report hyperlinks and dashboards. What it means is that how you can make, you have two types of dashlets and dashboards. One can be an ad hoc view, one can be a studio report. And this is to make sure that both of them are interactive with each other. We also have introduced advanced date time calculations like year on year, year to date, and quarter to date. We have several other UI improvements. Some of them Anna will talk about, and many of them are listed on our site in the What's New page. We have also continued to invest in the observability, which so we are using OpenTelemetry to enhance our tracing and monitoring. This is primarily for customers when they report certain issues, right? It'll enable us quickly figure out where the issues are and resolve the customer issues, right? Authentication. So we have been supporting all different types of authentications for years. But what customers have to do is they have to go inside our classes and modify and customize them, right? So with 9.0, we have made it out-of-the-box support, especially for OAuth, OpenID providers. And what it means is that you can simply go to the XML file, configure all the properties, and you're done. You don't have to go through all the customizations. Also, for customers who are using Scheduler with Microsoft, right? Microsoft has stopped supporting simple user ID and password. So we have made sure that we have support for Graph API authentication in Scheduler. So going forward, you don't have to use a simple user ID and password. Data processing. So as to improve the performance of Jaspersoft, we looked at two different areas, processing outside Jaspersoft and also within Jaspersoft. The first goal was to look at the data processing outside. So we looked at various providers out there in the market, and we finalized on Trino. So we have integrated with Trino. What it does is gives us two capabilities. One, since we have added the support for Trino in our domains, so you can have catalog support in domains, and you can have data federation. That means in Trino, you can have multiple databases under a catalog, and that catalog can be exposed to domains. So you can have a concept of data federation. Also, what we have seen in our tests, I'm being very clear that it is our test in our environment. In many cases, the Trino's performance has been much better than the underlying database. And I'm more than happy to share that data, the environment with you guys on a call and show what kind of results we received with Trino. Security. So security, as it's the #1 priority here at CSG and Jaspersoft. So every time any CVs are reported or any security issues are reported, we have made sure that we resolve them. So with 9.0, there are a couple of big ones which are going on which is secured GNDI data sources was reported by a customer. So we resolved it, and that is part of 9.0. There are multiple library updates and security fixes. All of them, where we made sure that all these fixes are there in the release notes and all the different guides that we have published. All right, moving forward, JasperReports library and Jaspersoft Studio 9.0. And some of them Julio will cover in his demo. But primarily, we'll talk about Web Studio. So this is our third release of Web Studio, which we released last year or year before last. And we have been continuously working to make it much more powerful and started porting more and more features from desktop to Web Studio. I've repeated it time and again, the desktop will continue to exist, right? What we want to make sure is that customers have the option of doing both. And we want to make sure that Web Studio has, most of the features from desktop. So this is what we have done. And we have worked a lot on the UI UX part, like for example, drag and drop fields, expression editor, automatic error validation. And Julio will go through that in the demo. We've also added repository. This is for customers who are purely using Web Studio with, let's suppose, JRIO, right? So we have added Jackrabbit as a default repository for customers who are not using JasperReports Server as a repository. We've also introduced white labeling with Web Studio. What it does is that initially customers were giving their developers or their users Desktop Studio, and obviously it had all Jaspersoft on it. But now you can completely white label the Web Studio, and your users or your customers will not understand and know that it's Jaspersoft. You can completely white label it. And again, as I said in the beginning, Julio will spend some time on white labeling concept. There are also multiple changes on the library and desktop studio side. There is support for different PDF A2 and PDF A2B. We have UX improvements just from the workflow perspective. So there are two versions of Web Studio. There is the standalone for customers who are using that with JRIO. And there is an integrated, which is within the JasperReports server. So you don't have to go outside, right? So we have worked in the workflow where you can just start creating a new report directly from JasperReports Server. You don't even have to go to a desktop or a standalone version of Web Studio. We also introduced HTML component. This is the pro-only component. And this is to insert the HTML inside a report. Julio, you will cover that in the demo. From the performance perspective, we have.
Yeah,
right, Julio. Okay. From the performance perspective, we have also covered, we have moved to Fast Excel. This is, in this case, this is a different data provider where we only read the data and skip all the metadata part. So it is much, from performance perspective, it is much more faster. And then we have also worked on various other performance areas like the HTML marker processors, right? Now, that's all the new features. Now let's talk about the most important part, right? What are the functionality changes and how do you plan for the upgrade? So before we talk about upgrade, there are a few things that you should always look at. Now, the first thing you should look at the timelines for different supports, right? So all the timelines have been posted on our site. And if you have any questions, reach out to your AEs, CS, or support guys. The second, I would say, if you have customer success with your team, then set up a meeting. Figure out all the changes that are going in 9.0. So whether you're coming from 8.0 prior to 8.0 or 8.1 and 8.2, there is a very clear upgrade guide that we have published, which talks about that how do you upgrade from this version to 9.0 version, because you will be rolling all the changes. Let's suppose you're coming from 8.0 to 9.0. You'll also be getting the changes from 8.1 and 8.2, right? Some of the areas so we have introduced something like an ad hoc component. Now, this is a big feature for us. What it does is, for example, today you have an ad hoc view and you also save that as a report. Now, whenever we used to make changes to ad hoc view, the report used to break. So we have decoupled the ad hoc view from the report. So what it does is that as you make changes to ad hoc view, the report automatically adjusts and the report does not break. We have the new JNDI security, as I said, but the default becomes, there's a change in which is a default JNDI data source, and that is all documented. And we also, I spoke about OAuth with OpenID. This is a new feature, but for customers who have customized and used certain libraries, there were some certain library changes. So I would highly recommend you to work with CAS support and also go through our release notes, detailed release notes and guides to understand what has changed and how will that impact your customizations. One of the big things that we have done is we have removed progress drivers. And we did for Simba drivers in the previous release, and now we are doing it for progress drivers. What we realize is the most of the drivers that are freely available in the market, and most customers are using the native database drivers, right? So we have detailed notes, an article on the impact on each and every driver as a data source, as a repository, what changes you have to make. And if you have any change, let's suppose you were using progress drivers and now you have challenges using the native, feel free to reach out to me and I can definitely, assist you with that. Quality enhancements. With every release, we target multiple bugs. So in this also, we have targeted 100+ customer bugs and error enhancement request, right? And in the areas of ad hoc, input controls, query execution, and many more. Moving forward, platform updates. So this is what we do every release. We add, either we add a version or remove a version or add a net new platform, either for operating systems, application servers, databases. So in this release, we have added support for 9.0, although 9.0 was also introduced lately for 8.2 release. Added support for Mac OS 13. And the application server, we have added support for JBoss Web Server. And in the databases, we have added support for MongoDB 6.x and 7.x, and PostgreSQL 15. Java update, we have the support added for it 8. We also have added support for Java 17 since 8.2. So that rolls in with 9.0 also. So we support 3 different versions of Java, 8, 11, and 17 right now. Library updates, we have multiple library updates. As I said, there's a continuous scan that happens. Whenever we find CVs, we close them. And if the customers report them, we take them as the highest priority and we close them. So you might see even on the 9.0, there will be a few hot fixes going on. So some customers have reported some CVs, right, recent CVs, and we have made sure that we fix them on a high priority basis. So yeah, I'll always refer you to release notes. You'll get all the information. Couple of more updates that you will see that we have added all new website for jaspersoft.com and community. Our marketing team has done a very good job. The site looks much more modern, and from the messaging perspective, it's very crisp, right? So if whatever information that you want to find, it's right there. So even from the events perspective, from the webinar perspective, from the resources perspective, it's right there. And we have also updated our entire community platform. The goal is to work with our customers and community members and make sure that we contribute to them and we collaborate with them much more effectively. All right, this is a release calendar that went from 8.0 to 9.0. So this is where we are right now. Our next would be 9.1, which will be a mainstream release. We haven't finalized the date, but as per release calendar, this typically take 4 to 6 months, right? So once we finalize the date, we'll share the dates with everyone. All right, so with that, Anna, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Abhishek. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to be covering 2 major features that we're releasing in JasperReports Server 9.0. As Abhishek mentioned, one of those is alerting, and the other one is drill down in ad hoc views. And I'm going to start with the drill down. So I'm going to create an ad hoc view. So drill down is available for most chart types. Those chart types are column and bar, line and area, all dual and multi-axis, scatter and bubble, and single level pies. So the pie and the semi-pie. So today what I want to do is build a column chart, and I'm going to be looking at the sales of 4 brands across multiple localities. So I will choose my stacked column. And I'm going to start out by filtering my brand. So I want to see 4 brands. Best, Colossal, go with Urban, and Walrus. Okay, so I want to see sales. So got sales for the 4 brands. And now the fields that I'm going to add to rows are going to be my hierarchy. So the drill hierarchy that I'm going to want to use. So what I'm going to do here, since it's based on locality, go with country, state, and city. Okay, so I'm ready to enable my drill down, and to do that, you'll notice a new section up here in the filters panel, drill down. So all I have to do is just turn it on. So enable drill down. And my chart automatically goes to the highest level of the drill. So that would be country. So I'm going to look at California. So I'll start by clicking on the USA column, and then California. And now I can see the cities in California for the sales across the 4 brands across the 4 cities that have stores in California. So as I've drilled down, there are breadcrumbs up here in the upper left that show you what level of the drill that you're on. And you can use this to drill back up. So you can either go up level by level, or you can go straight back up to the country level, which is represented by the link that says totals. So if I go back up one by one, I am then at the top level of the drill. And of course, if I want to turn it off, I can turn it off again, but I'm going to leave it on. I'm going to save this because I want to use this in a dashboard. So the nice thing here is that I can actually have this drill down functionality if I use this particular ad hoc view in a dashboard. So I'll show you how that works. So I'll create a dashboard. Find my view. And the important thing to note is that in order for drill down to work in dashboard, it needs to be turned on in the original ad hoc view, which I have done. So it's on. And I can disable it if I want. So this hyperlink section of the dashlit settings has enable drill down, which is on by default. And I can turn it off if I don't want there to be drill down, but I'm going to leave it on and show you that when I go to view mode, and my drill down works just like it did in the ad hoc view. And again, I have my breadcrumbs up here, so I can drill all the way back up to the top level. Okay, back to editing. I'll save this. Okay, so that is the drill down feature, and next I'm going to show you the new alerting feature. So for this, Alerting is for reports that have some sort of data grid, so a crosstab or a table. So I'm going to open a report and create an alert for a report that I know has a table in it. So that would be the interactive sales report. So to add my alert, I'm going to have to turn on alert mode. To do that, I would use this new button up in the toolbar. This is turn on alert mode. So once I click on that, alert mode is on and the canvas has a blue border around it. And you'll notice that a lot of these toolbar buttons are now grayed out. So you won't be able to use that functionality while you're in alert mode. So I can create alerts on numeric values in a table or crosstab. And that will be indicated by a pink border whenever I hover over anything that's eligible to create an alert for. So I'm going to create an alert for sales. So once I click on this, it's going to open up this create alert drawer and I can start creating my alert. There are 5 tabs. We've got condition, parameters, schedule, notifications, and output. So I'll give my alert a name. I'm going to be alerted if there are some high sales. So we'll see if they're greater than 20,000. Now parameters is read only, and what this shows you is any input controls that are applied to this report. For schedule, this is where I set my recurrence. So the default is fine. I'm going to run this every day, and I can either start it now or on a specific date and time. So I could set a specific date here if I wanted to. I'm just going to stick with now because that's fine. And notifications, I can send this to one or more email addresses. And the message is optional. You do need to have email addresses in a subject message. You can add one or not. I will. And as far as how you get access to the report, or the person who receives this alert gets access to the report, you can include it as a repository link, and you can choose that location in the repository where the report output will go, or you can include the file as an attachment. So I will include it as an attachment. And the last tab, output, I can name my file something different if I want. I'm just going to keep the default name, and I can set a different time zone if I need to. I will stick with Pacific Standard Time. And you can select one or more formats here. So PDF is selected by default. Just select web page 2. Now you may have noticed as I've been creating my alert, there is this status panel over on the left-hand side that shows the values that you've selected, and it validates things as you go along. If, for example, I had forgotten something, so I forgot to enter my value, it will tell me that over here. You can go to other tabs and fill out other inputs in your alert, but you won't be able to save it until these have all been validated as correct. So if I go back to my condition and add my value again, then everything is okay. So now I can create my alert. And that is all I need to do here. I'm just going to create the one alert. So I'm going to turn off alert mode, and all this other functionality is back now. Now let's say I wanted to see if there are other alerts for this particular report. I can see a list of all the alerts for this report by clicking on this View Alert List button up here. I know that there are alerts for this report because there's a blue dot on the bell icon. If there was no blue dot, that would mean there are no alerts associated with this report. But I'm going to click on this because it tells me there are, and it looks like there's 2 alerts for this. There's high sales, which I just created, and there's also a low sales alert. And from here I can edit it. So I can go back into these and switch anything. And I can also delete an alert. So I'm going to keep it. So let's say I want to see not just alerts for this report, but all alerts that exist for all reports. I am logged in as super user, so with that level of access, I'll be able to see all alerts associated with all reports for all users. And I can do that, actually, as a super user, I can do that two ways. First, there is view, schedules, and alerts. So I can see scheduled jobs, and then I can also see all the alerts that are associated with all the reports. So, you know, here it looks like we've got 5 different alerts from various different users. There's one from me, super user, looks like an admin has one, and then just a regular user also has an alert associated with a report. Now, if I was logged in as Jasper admin, I'm only going to see alerts for those in my organization and for myself. So I would only be seeing 2. I would be seeing this one from Jasper admin and this one from California user. And if I was logged in only as a user, so say I'm California user, I would only be able to see my alerts. So alternately, as a super user and also for Jasper admin, I can also see alerts in the admin console. So there's 3 tabs here. There's schedules, just like we had in the view schedules and alerts. There's this diagnostics tab over here, which existed before, but then there's also a new alerts tab. So this shows me the same thing as the schedules and alerts, but it's only available to super users and to Jasper admins. And same as within the report, I can edit an alert like so, and I can also delete. So that is alerting, and before I hand it over to Julio, I actually want to show you a couple of other small UI changes that we've made. Those can be found in server settings. So first off, we've given this whole server settings area a little bit of a facelift. So every screen here just looks a little bit more modern. But we have 2 new settings in ad hoc settings. The first of those is always show input controls, which is off by default. And what that does is that enables for reports the always prompt option. So what that means is whenever you open a report, you will always be prompted for the input controls. There is an option, and I can show you this so you have a better idea. Let's go to library, find a report. Let's look at, actually, let's do this. Reports. So if I go into edit, it's in controls and resources. So if I turn that on, that is the equivalent of checking this always prompt box. And any report that I create while I have that option turned on in server settings is going to have this always prompt selected. So that's how that works. And then secondly, this is a highly requested feature, and this is default ad hoc visualization type. So crosstab is the default visualization type, but that's not what all of our users want. So we've added this so you can select your own default chart type. So you may want to have table, like many of our users actually do. So I can select table, change that. And then if I create an ad hoc view, table is my default chart type. So that concludes my presentation on alerting, drill down, and a couple of the UI improvements. And now I can hand it over to Julio.
Thank you, Anna. So there are some questions about alerting in the chat. So while Julio does the demo, you can basically address them. All right, Julio.
Sure. So while Anna is going to read all the questions, I will start my presentation then. Let me share the screen. All right, we are ready. Let me close this dialog. Oops. All right, so Jaspersoft Studio 9 and JasperReports Web Studio 3.0. Well, these are the confidentiality and disclaimer. You probably read that at the beginning of the presentation of Abhishek. So let's start with what's new in Jaspersoft Studio. Some informations have been given already by Abhishek, but just want to give you a couple of more details. Let's start with the new data source using fastest Excel reader library. This increase a lot of the speed in reading data from Excel files. But just to give you a sense of that, 30 megabytes Excel file was producing an usage of heap memory around 5 gigabytes, something giant. With this new library, the consumption of memory is extremely lower, and this allows to, well, makes actually everything faster. And then, well, very quickly, we are able to reuse SVG repeated inside PDF. That's what makes the PDF smaller when exported. Very interesting is this ability to decide when to cut a text when rendering a text field. So let's imagine you have a report. Up to now, you had just two options: cut the text to fit what's the size of the text field has been decided at design time, or let the text field grow as much as it needs. Well, with this property, we can limit this height. And the ad hoc component is something that also Abhishek highlighted. So let's move to the next slide. Let's start talking about JasperReports Web Studio 3.0. So there are several improvements in the applications. In particular, we added a new expressions editor. We added support for drag and dropping, copy and paste, and we will see how we can create reports with JasperReports Web Studio when integrated in JasperReports Server. I want to remind that JasperReports Server 9.0 comes with JasperReports Web Studio 3.0 built in. We also will see how we can, from JasperReports Web Studio, create a report for JasperReports Server. And all of this without actually using Jaspersoft Studio Desktop. We will see how the white labeling works, and then we will see other small features added to JasperReports Web Studio. At the end of this, we will see something about the HTML component. Okay, so let's start with this. I'm not able to close the chat because let me. Okay, now I'm able to. Okay, so let's start with JasperReports Web Studio. When we start working with JasperReports Web Studio, we have several options in terms of repositories. But in general, what eventually was picked as the best options for users is this Jackrabbit repository. So Jackrabbit is just like some kind of file manager, let's say, but it's actually much more. And this is what you can use to store your file, which are protected by credentials. Actually, there is a default admin credential in my instance. And so this is my user. Inside my user, I have my repository. Inside my repository, I have my files. From here, I can start, like always, add stuff like data adapters or create new reports. In this case, I created a demo folder in which I have some information that I will use during the demo creation, during the creation of our report. So let's start by creating a new report here. And let me close this. And from here, the first things I usually need to do is to add data. Now, many people get confused and they try to run the report and they get immediately report is empty. This is because there is no data. If you want to start by not having data, the idea is that you want to use when no data show here, just print all sections, not details. And this will print all the report bands without going through data. Of course, our report is still empty, but at least we are able to see a page here. Well, to give a sense of what we can see here, I put in the title a rectangle and in the day another rectangle. In this case, I will see only the rectangle that is in the title because there is no data. Okay, let's move forward. Let's get some data. And to get some data, I go to the data set, and here I will pick a data adapter. JasperReports Web Studio uses data adapter to get data out of data sources. I already prepared some data adapter, which is inside data, and it's the HSQL DB data adapter. This connects to the, well, popular or historical database shipped with JasperReports, which is Northwind. I can get the data for my report, for my data source. Let's see, there are several tables, so we can just select star from orders, for instance. Okay. At this point, I can read the fields. I have my fields that are read automatically from the query, and I can preview my data if I want to be sure I'm getting what I want. At this point, I close the query editor, and I can just drag my fields directly into the designer, right? Let's align this to the top and put this like this. All right. Well, I need just to resize the detail here, and I can see my report. There will be some space on top for the title band still there, but here are my my records. Now, let's add another field. So I'll go to field here. Sorry, to data set here, and I will add my ship country here. Here is. Okay, and I'll again run this. I see these are lowercase. I want to see them uppercase. In that case, I select my text field. And now in properties, under the expression that populates this text field, with the dots here, I see it's the new text expression editor that will allows me to, for instance, drag something. Let's say I want a country, and I also want my ship region, and this will be separated, for instance, by space like this. All right. This is actually drag this in the wrong place. You can also double click if you want. There are like this. There are several ways to add this object inside my expression. Okay, at this point, let's run it and see how the new text comes. And when, in many cases, the city is just now, this is actually the region, so it's like a province, something is now for most of the records. All right. So this is the drag and drop and the expression editor. We also have the ability to copy and paste elements now, and this works for all the elements in the included complex elements. So let's say for instance, let's create a frame. A frame is a container. Let's move a couple of elements inside my frame like this. You see that now the elements are inside my frame. Let's resize it. And I can just copy my frame, click, for instance, the band where I want to copy it. And in this case, I want to copy inside the detail and paste. And you will see that I copied. It's essentially a deep copy of all the selection I have. So if I preview this, it's going to become a pretty large report now. But see, I have copied all my elements. Now, copy and paste actually works cross-browser. So let's say, let's open here a new instance of JasperReports Web Studio. I go to demo, I create a new report here, and I want to copy all this stuff here. I hit Control-C or Command-C, depending by your machine, or you can actually also use the browser capability here. And here I will select the band where I want to paste my object. This is important. If I don't select a container, JasperSoft Studio, JasperReports Web Studio will not know where to copy my fields. And I click paste or Command V or Control V to paste my elements. Of course, in this case, I paste some elements which are referencing fields that are not in my dataset. So this report is not going to work. But the point is that still I'm able to quickly get stuff from a report to another. Okay. Another improvement is on the image selector. So if I add an image here, well, let's add first a rectangle because my image is a white image, so will not be able to be seen here. So I create a rectangle, and I will set the back color for this rectangle to something like blue. There is. Okay. Now I drag my image here inside my report, and I can now pick from image. Here I have both the expression if I want, or with the lens here, I can go and pick an image if I want. Okay, this is an SVG image. When I run my report, will reference this image element inside my repository. Okay, so as you can see, it's a little bit hard to read, but the image reference here is not an absolute path, is a relative path to the JRXML. Of course, it could also be absolute path, but the point is that this way, if you move this image and the JRXML in another folder, the reference will be kept, of course, right? Okay, now let's see how I can create something on JasperReports Server when I use JasperReports Server as a repository. So first, I'm going to log out from here. I go to the home page and I tell JasperReports Web Studio that I want to connect to JasperReports Server. I set my credentials for JasperReports Server and I connect to JasperReports Server. Okay, and here I'm already in my instance of JasperReports Server. Or at least I'm navigating the repository of my JasperReports Server. So I go to organizations. I created a folder, JRWS. I can actually create a new folder. Let's say test webinar. And so these folder will be visible inside JasperReports Server. I have JasperReports Server here, so we could actually verify this. So I go to the repository, JasperReports Web Studio, and I see I have my web test webinar folder. From here, I'm going to create a new report unit. So as you can see, usually what I'm going to create is a new report. But in this case, I will create a new report unit. And I give a name to this report unit, like test 001. And what JasperReports Web Studio will do for me is create a folder. Why a folder? Because our report unit is essentially a container for several objects that compose the report itself. So at this point, I can start creating my report. It starts with a very, very blank report. So I may want to at least add a title here and put something like a rectangle, or let's say hello world, something like that. Static tags and the world. By default, my report will not have a connection, but I still can create a data adapter and use a data adapter to run my report unit or to feed the data in my report. So I save this. For now, I will set this to when no data show, all sections, no details. I can preview this. And I see my report from JasperReports Web Studio. Now let's go to JasperReports Server. So let's update this, refresh the page. I see I have a report unit, test 001. And if I run it, I get exactly what I just designed. Now let's do the other way around. Let's create a report inside JasperReports Server and without using Jaspersoft Studio. To do this, I will start by adding a new report unit, which is a Jasper report. And here I will call this task 002. I don't want to upload an existing JarXML. I want to start with a blank JarXML. And in this case, I actually want to use data. And this data is not going to come from our data adapter, but I want to get data from a real JasperReports Server data source. So I'm going to select from the repository like a data source. I prepare a simple database called flights. And actually, this is a database that is used for samples for Postgres. And at this point, I can just save my report unit. On save, since I asked the JasperReports server to create a blank JSXML for me, I will see the JasperReports Web Studio, or actually the designer, embedded in JasperReports Server. Here, I'm still in JasperReports Server. I'm not in JasperReports Web Studio. Well, technically, this is the designer provided by JasperReports Web Studio. But what I meant is that I did not leave JasperReports Server. So let's, again, put here text. These are flights. Or even back other bookings. I think it was bookings. We will check now. We go to dataset. I want to use SQL, but I'm not going to select any data adapter in this case, because by being inside a report unit, I should be able to get the data from the report unit itself. This get metadata in this case is not going to work. This because JasperReports Web Studio is not able to use report unit data source to fetch internal data of what is provided by JDBC. But still, I can create my query, for instance, select star from bookings. I will limit to 10. I don't remember if bookings is the right table. Hopefully it is. Okay. I see my fields here. I actually previewed the data. So Jasper, I was able from inside the designer to run the query that will go through the report unit data source. In this case, a JDBC data source. And well, let's use this data to, let's see this data inside report here. All right, total amount. Okay, and make this a little bit smaller. All right, at this point, I can test my report. Maybe I want also to add a variable. Here I can see all the built-in variable. I will add a variable for the page number and another variable that will be used to see all the pages inside the report. To do this, I need to change the evaluation time of this text field in order to show me the value of page number at the end of my report. So this is the current page. This is the current page at the end of the report, which in other words is the total number of pages. Okay, let's run this. Now, I get a message, a warning message that is telling me that if I preview this file here, I'm also going to save it. This is important because when I'm inside JasperReports Server, there is no way to preview something that is not saved already in the database. But in some cases, I may not want to save this and overwrite an existing resource. So this warnings reminds me that I'm going to overwrite a resource. If I don't want to overwrite the resource, I can cancel. I can still save something with another name, but that's not our case. So we are happy to overwrite our JRXML. So here is the file, and as you may see here, I have one of 2 pages. We actually have 2 pages, so here's 2 of 2. Okay, now let's move to Studio. So big jump here. We go to our Studio environment, JasperReports Web Studio standalone, let's say. Let's go to test webinar, and I see the second report unit. I mean, this looks like a folder, but it tells me this is a report unit. And let's open this report unit. I can make a change. For instance, we can set the background color not to be transparent, and let's say to yellow, this total amount. Save this. Preview, and this is the nice part. So I'm not using a data adapter, but I'm still able, actually JasperReports Web Studio is able behind the scene to get the data from the report unit and properly preview my report, even if I'm not running this report from inside JasperReports Server. This because actually the execution is demanded to JasperReports Server in this case. And as you can see here in the data, I did not set any data adapter while I'm on my standalone version of JasperReports Web Studio. Okay, so the last step is to check that we got the right changes. So I can simply close this, exit the editor, run test 2, and I see that what I'm looking at is the report unit modified through JasperReports Web Studio standalone. Okay, well, some jumps here and there. I hope you were able to follow the idea, but as you have seen, we've created 2 report units, and we did not use at any time Jaspersoft Studio. Okay, so let's move to see how we can brand JasperReports Web Studio. So for now, we have seen this is a standalone application that is very recognizable. The Jaspersoft brands here. We have an About JasperReports Web Studio here, and we have copyrights shown here. So let's say we want to use this in another context, and we want to brand this application with our own colors, CSS, images. Okay, this is possible through this concept of white labeling or branding. And this is how we are going to brand JasperReports Web Studio. So let's move to a shell here. This is my server running, and I'm going to kill this. And let's also claim this one. So this is the main directory where my JasperReports Web Studio is installed. And if I look into this directory, I see there is a JasperReports Web Studio properties. Now, this is a very important file that describes many of the characteristics that will be used by JasperReports Web Studio. So let's open this folder and see what else we have inside. So let's close all these files and go to the root. Okay, here we have this JasperReports Web Studio properties. Here, as I said, we can set several things, including the possibility to enable different repository types. But there is a property I'm interested into, which is this one, JasperReports Web Studio.branding.config. This property is commented out, but if we uncomment it, we can specify a location for a properties file where we are going to describe the way we brand JasperReports Web Studio. So the name of the file is arbitrary. This variable reference to the root of my installation. It's not mandatory, but it's clearly useful in order to keep things very path independent. And so let's take a look to this Acme branding.properties. So inside this properties file, this is just a text file, very simple. We can define several properties, included the new name for the product, the company providing the product. We can enable, disable couple of things in the on page. We may also entirely customize the HTML shown in the About dialog that we have seen a few seconds ago. And this is probably the most important thing, we can provide our own custom CSS file. Now, where should we put this file? This file will be put inside the JasperReports Web Studio folder, Web Apps, JasperReports Web Studio main, Assets, Public. And I also specify a subfolder, which is Acme. Essentially, this public folder here is the folder that is exposed by JasperReports Web Studio when I load some file in the URL. Now, what I did here in the CSS, I will reference some of the images that are here. I could also reference other CSS and so on. So let's go back here. We enable this property, we save the file. It's time to run the server again. So let's start JasperReports Server. He will pick up the new options that we have set for JasperReports Web Studio. And what we are supposed to see is a new version of Studio with different colors. So I'll take a second to start. Here we are. So, okay, this could have been cached, so we may have to reload this a couple of times. So let's reload this again. Okay, and here we have set a new set of colors. We have a custom about dialog. We have different copyright mentions here. And we were able also to customize internal pages. And of course, even Jasper, the designer as well. So if I go and open a sample, like an invoice here, you see that also this part has been fully customized in terms of colors, but with CSS, I could modify even other parts of the look and feel. Okay, here what I just opened is a report that have been entirely created with JasperReports Web Studio. This was not created with Jaspersoft Studio, but was created fully on the web. There are a couple of other examples. Another invoice like this one, which use the background band to create a lateral bar and big numbers for the pages. And the summary. And then we have several others like this, as reminds you, ticket for baseball game or for a football game. And finally, an hypothetical rental contract for scooters. Right. So all these reports have been all designed with JasperReports Web Studio without zero intervention with the Jaspersoft Studio desktop. But we are now going to switch to Jaspersoft Studio desktop, because the next argument we're going to talk about is the HTML component. Now, the HTML component is not currently available in the regular downloads. So if you download JasperSoft Studio Professional 9, you will not find this HTML component yet, but you will very, very soon. Okay. What is this about? It's a component that allows me to inject essentially HTML inside a report. Let's make a test and let's create a report. And I actually want a report with some content inside. So you can see how this report will actually mix with stuff that I may have inside my report. So in this case, I have just a couple of title, a couple of images. This is an empty report, so I will still use my trick to print all sections, not details, and preview my report. Okay, this is my report, and now I want to show here, along with my data, some HTML. Now, to do this, well, first of all, I will make my detail a little bit bigger. And from the palette for Pro components, remember that the HTML component is a Pro-only component. I will drag my component inside my detail. Now, what can I do with this component? Well, I suppose to provide HTML. And HTML can be provided in two ways. Inside the HTML tab here, I can start typing something. Could be something very simple. Path from my HTML component. And maybe just to start, I will start with some bold expression like that. Finish. If I preview this report, I actually have a detail because I have one empty record here. And you see that my component here is in bold. Now, if I export this to HTML, this one is pure HTML. If I export this to PDF, where is it? PDF, my text is also selectable. So this is not an image. If I export this to any other document, this will be translated to an image, okay? But, well, okay, let's do something more interesting. I prepared, usually what I envision like the typical use case is that you have HTML content in your database and you may want to reference this through a field of your data source. But in other cases, you may want to use this kind of elements also to, for instance, write a long text, which is always something extremely annoying with JasperReports, especially if your text, static text, contains tables, contains different references, and so on. So just to give you an idea of what could be the workflow, I created a very simple web page here where we have an HTML editor. This is TinyMC, a popular web-based HTML editor. So here we are going to say, hello world HTML component. Maybe I want this HTML component, I don't know, in a different color. I'm not sure if it's supported, or let's use simply, or maybe here I have, okay, and bold, underline, and I'm sure that I could define colors. I can find this right now, but that is not really important. Okay, now I created a simple button that simply gets the HTML from this component, right? I can technically actually see the source like this. But the additional step that this does is also escaping the character that does not play properly in a Java expression. Because remember, what the component expects here is a Java expression. So this is just a matter of escaping a couple of characters, nothing special. So it was convenient to create these two lines of JavaScript to do this for the purpose of this demo. Now I can copy this HTML and set my expression, finish, and preview my report. Now this is kind of cumbersome because this is a, as you can see, is the orientation as a portrait, but here is my page rendered inside my report. As you can see, it starts properly. And what is extremely important is the fact that the component ensures that the text is not going to cut in the middle of a split. So all the text will be always remain without cuts, okay? Always properly visible. If we make this element smaller, this is what we are going to use as a width for my page. And I actually, I don't know, add some parameter here, or let's say, let's add
Julio,
yeah?
Sorry to interrupt. Time check.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I'm finished. I'm just at the end. As you can see, it will take just the size I really wanted for my element. It will span over several pages, but this is how the component actually works. And in PDF, or my text is selectable. Links will not work in PDF, but they will when this is exported in an HTML page. JavaScript is disabled by default, but can be enabled, not suggested really. And also there are several other measures that can be taken for enhanced security. And that's pretty much all about the HTML component. I hope you found the presentation useful, and well, looking forward for any questions you may have.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, there are many questions on the chat window, and we'll also take them at the end. So many of you who have posted questions on alerting, we are answering them. Yuri is also here. So we'll definitely go through them one by one. So Julia, if you let me share my screen.
Sure.
I know we are running short of time, so I will be quick. I wanted to talk about one quick feature before we go into Q&A, right? So with this release, right after this release, we also have, all right, my screen is loading. So we have received a request from several customers and partners that they would want to collaborate closely with engineering. So what we have done is that we're coming up our own Jaspersoft engineering instance. This is completely AWS hosted with a server in Germany, right? And the goal is that it'll have a direct instance to JasperReports Server and JasperReports Web Studio. And this is what the Jaspersoft engineering team will use to enable and contribute to the wider community and customers. And we also invite customers, partners, community members to come and work with us. It will allow you to basically see what we build, clone it, clone our work, and basically take it and use it as a sample, as a standard. And we also would love to see that what you are building. And let's suppose if you have questions, this is the best platform for you to go ahead and share your work. And if you have any questions, we can directly go and look into your work, make changes, and to show that how that can be done in a different way, right? So this is something that we will be launching very soon. And if you want to try it right away for some of the early users, you can reach out to me via this particular email ID, JasperProduct team. This comes with a well-defined data privacy policies and data retention policies. So everything will be very open. It's, as I said, it's a very open environment to contribute and collaborate with Jaspersoft engineering. Now, I know that we are running short of time and there's several questions, so I will skip the next section, which is the future topics that we're working on. And let's get straight away into Q&A. So I will take some of the questions. Anna, why don't you take some of the questions on alerting, and Yuri answer them, and then we'll go to Julio, and lastly, I'll take some questions.
So I'm answering questions in the chat, and Yuri is also helping me. Did you want us to pick questions?
So there are a couple of questions. I think that they were right in the beginning. Let me open it. So let me put them so that we make sure that we go in order also. So there was also a question that is the drill down supported only for charts or also for tables and crosstabs?
I did answer that.
Charts.
Good.
Yeah.
So I wasn't checking the answers. So then I'll let you go through those questions. And Julia, you have also questions. So I'll take some of the questions and you guys can tell me if those are already answered or not, right? So Anna, for you, do you plan to build a similar UI like alerting for schedulers?
Can you repeat that question?
So the UI that you have for alerting and the alerting report view work, do you have plans to make similar UI for the scheduler, the main scheduler?
I think Yuri would be able to answer that better than I could.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Sure. We were discussing this option. We were considering this change, but what we want to do, we want to have feedback from our users to understand if they like alerts UI, and if they do, we can consider moving to this UI for scheduler as well in the future.
All right, thanks, Yuri. I know that you also answered the questions around visualize, right? There's a question that is the drill down supported for all chart types, and is it also supported in dashboard?
So the answer is there is a list of charts which support drill down. Not all of them support, but all which for which makes sense, drill down makes sense, we support it. Basic rule is if you have multiple fields in rows, and alert drill down works only for rows, then you should have drill down. But we have in documentation, we have all these charts which are supported. Regarding dashboard, yes, it is supported in dashboard. So wherever you add to dashboard, it will be drilled down.
Okay. The next question is, can ad hoc view pull data through a data adapter connection rather than using domains?
And the answer is, yeah, I think no.
But you can always use a custom data source, right, Yuri? If you want to use
That's true.
data.
That's, I mean, there is no direct way, but custom data source, yes.
All right. Sure. And how is the HTML component different from using text field with markup as HTML? This is for you, Julia.
Yeah, well, it's completely different. The HTML markup just supports minimal HTML use case like bold, italic, and a few other options, which, by the way, has been improved in the latest version. This HTML component is really about injecting an entire HTML-based layout, which includes table, images, and it could potentially be as big as well, several pages. Moreover, I did not show that, but you can eventually also use an URL to load your HTML to be squeezed inside your report.
Okay. Next question is, JasperReports Desktop Studio will eventually be replaced? No, both will continue to exist. Desktop Studio and Web Studio, right? So as I said, initially, we don't have any plans on deprecating desktop. That will continue to exist along with Web Studio. Two different use cases. Then this we answered live. One more question. I'm just trying to. Where can we get the HTML Pro component? Julia, that's for you.
Yeah, well, as soon as we make available on the community side for remember, this is a pro version, this is a pro component, right? So it will either be provided as a separate plugin or included in the next version of JasperReport or Jaspersoft Studio Pro. But something that we are going to decide in these days, and the next short time, this component will be available.
Okay. Thanks, Julio. Next question again to you. In the branding that you showed, can you add a notification page before the login page is displayed?
Well, this actually would require some different type of embedding of JasperReports Web Studio, but the branding in particular is limited only to the look and feel. So in general, I would say no if the idea is to modify the application itself.
All right. Yuri, next question to you. Can we limit the number of alerts created per report or per tenant?
We don't have such configuration out of the box. It probably can be achieved via customization, but it is good to know that there is interest, so we can consider it for future improvements. Also, if there are any requests for such improvements, you can add your ideas on our ideas portal.
Okay. Thanks, Yuri. Julia, next question to you. Does Web Studio work with external auth to use JasperReports Server data?
JasperReports Web Studio does support OAuth 2 for authentication. This does not mean that the data sources that are used to get the data when a report is executed do support OAuth 2. So it really depends by a specific use case. I don't have a yes or no answer right now.
All right. So next question for you, Julia. Again, what are the additional memory which we need to consider to use Web Studio with JasperReports Server?
Well, JasperReports Web Studio works on the client. So it's definitely not something that adds up to the requirements of JasperReports Server. After all, the execution is performed through JRIO, just like the internals of JasperReports Server. There will be no real changes respect to what is required when you use Jaspersoft Studio Desktop, for instance.
All right. And also, can you use report books and subqueries in the Web Studio?
Yes, they both are supported.
Okay. And this question I am trying to figure out for you, Yuri. Can you recommend a link for alerts with screenshots? I want to see how the data reviewing intervals get set up.
So let me rephrase. Do we want to see a screenshot of the intervals?
I have no idea. I'm also trying to figure out what the question means.
So right now we have intervals for hours, days, and weeks. So those are 3 intervals which we are allowing on the UI. If that was the question.
All right. There's another question. I think, Anna, you are responding to it. If you don't want to use alerts, can that be disabled? Or can we set it for certain users as compared to all?
Yeah, we've actually gotten that question in a number of forms, but the answer is you can hide or disable those buttons with custom CSS, but if you want to, if you need it to be permissions based or remove those icons altogether, you would need a customized solution.
All right. Thanks, Anna.
Sure.
Julia, for you, is the barcode or the QR code feature available in Web Studio?
Yes, they are. It's in the palette. It's not very visible, but yes, all the barcodes are there and supported.
I think the next question is a repetition that JasperSoft Studio 9.0 also support OpenID OAuth out of the box to log in with JasperReports Server.
I don't think so. I should check.
Okay. Do we, and this is for you, Yuri and Anna, do we have aggregate per week? This was a request submitted quite some time ago.
I'm not sure what you mean by aggregate. Are you talking about the alert frequency?
I think it's about ad hoc designer, and when we have date, there can be different aggregations or groupings. That's the question. If that's the question,
that's all it is. I mean, we don't have any more details on the question, so.
So we are considering it. We don't have it right now.
Okay, we have answered questions on number of alerts. There are many questions there. We have answered that. Let me see if there are more questions. If you're currently licensed for Studio, how to get the license for Web Studio? I think the best would be to work with your account executive, and they will tell you how to get the license for Web Studio. All right. In the branding part is answered. The upgrade guide mentions to go to JasperReports Server external authentication cookbook for OAuth with OpenID, but the doc is not within that link. So that doc is probably getting updated. I'll check and I'll make sure that doc is updated. And all right. That we've already answered. There are a few more, actually, there are many more questions. I'll take 4 or 5 more, and then if you have more questions, either you can reach out to us or by the support team, right? So, okay, let me. How long the 802X be supported? So this is a question. This is already on the support policy, our support page, right? We typically support the LTS for 6 more months. But there's also an extended support for 802X, which can be there for another 1 year, right? So please work with your account executives and support team, and they'll give you complete information on this one. I've already spoken about the documentation, where the documentation is available. There's a question that how do we get access to the to work with Jaspersoft engineering on this collaboration? As I said, reach out to us in the email. It has hosted instances of Server and Web Studio, so you'll be able to work with us. Our engineers will be creating a lot of content out there through that particular platform. So you're more than welcome to come and take it, clone it, and work with us, or share your work, and we can look into your work and help you us. There's a question that Desktop Studio's high chart, HTML5 charts have a limitation of being iframes and not dynamically flexible. Is this true for Web Studio as well? It is not true for ad hoc view. So Yuri or Julia, if you want to take that.
Well, the HTML outputs of JasperReports Web Studio is actually produced by JasperReports. So whatever is the output for Jaspersoft Studio Desktop will also be the output for JasperReports Web Studio.
All right, thanks. There is a question that are you also working with integration with an AI tool? Would AI be available? The answer is yes. So we did actually hackathons. We integrated with ChatGPT. We had integration in Studio as well in Server. Due to legal reasons, we could not really, productize it, but the integrations were done. We also plan to do more. This is what I was going to talk about future projects. And this is something that we think that in the collaboration space that we have built, we can actually show it to you. So if you're interested in that, do reach out to me. We can show it to you that the work that we have done and the plan for the future, right? Custom fonts, is it available in Web Studio?
So again, which
custom fonts? Custom font option.
Custom fonts. Yes. Well, they technically need to be available to JasperReports IO, and they can be contributed to in the same way that JDBC driver are contributed inside JasperReports Web Studio, which is through a special folder called JRInf, in which there is a context XML. So I may consider to make a video in the next few weeks about, well, hopefully much sooner, about how to extend, install, and use external jars, because font extension basically are jars that are added to the reporting environment, and their usage is now far from how other type of jars are used, like JDBC drivers, like scriptlets and stuff like this. But technically they are supported, because at the end of the day, the designer, you may not see a proper preview, but at the end of the day, what the designer does is create JXML that is run through Jasper, nothing less, nothing more.
All right. So there's a question that can we create a report by connecting to an ad hoc view rather than from domain in the studio? You can create a report, with an ad hoc view based on a domain, or it can also be on a studio, ad hoc, which is create. So you can create a studio topic and create an ad hoc view on top of it. So you can do both. This is a question. Sorry, I missed this question if it was already asked. So, but can reports be run off of JSON or be connected to a GraphQL? Many of our reports needs to use business logic rather than just dumping data from tables. I would rather do this in service layers so we can add testing for it rather than putting SQL directly in the report. That might be harder to test.
Yeah, so good point. Absolutely, yes. I mean, this is probably a very common use case where you don't use SQL directly inside the report. This is mostly in typical production reporting, right? Like invoices, like this kind of things. The invoices report that I've shown earlier were based on a JSON file. And this JSON can also be provided as a REST service. In this case, the JSON data adapter support pretty much everything you can put in an HTTP request. So header, custom body, authentication, whatever, and parameters, of course, which could be dynamic. In terms of GraphQL, you can actually access. I'm not sure what you mean for GraphQL. If it's the database, you can use a JDBC data source, JDBC driver to send GraphQL queries to GraphQL. Yes, that's possible. You will see the data in forms of typical JDBC tables. Or you can use your own logic and provide the data as JSON. This is also possible. Third option, you create your custom data source, and you will use that through your custom data adapter.
All right, thanks, Julio. So we have several more questions, but I think we're already over time. So if you think your questions haven't been answered, feel free to send that to me. I've shared the email jas-product-team@cloud.com. I want to thank you all for attending the webinar. Hope you found all the information very useful. I would highly recommend you to upgrade to 9.0. Work with your customer success account teams to make sure that you take all the steps necessary for the upgrade. And as we also invite customers, partners, community members to collaborate with us on the Jaspersoft collaboration space. And again, thank you to Anna, Julio, Yuri for presenting it and answering all the questions. With that, we will conclude this webinar. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day, good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
you.
Thank you, Abhi. Thank you, Anna.